Hello, lovely viewers. Welcome to another exciting edition of Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. We're coming to you live from our studios here on Studios 2 TV, as well as on Facebook, live on YouTube as well. Coming up on today's edition, first tranche of $600 million as part of IMF bailout lands in the account of the Bank of Ghana. We tell you what this means as the country begins its 3-year journey with the International Monetary Fund. The repercussions for you as an ordinary Ghanaian, particularly on the energy front, where utility tariffs are from the 1st of June expected to see an increase, particularly on the front of electricity, 18.36%. What does the IMF deal say in relation to that? That's what we're having for you today. If you stay with us here on Let's Talk Ghana, we're right back after this. You're welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. This show airs every Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays here on Studios 2 Television on YouTube as well as on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you, and so always leave a comment for us in the comment section, both on Facebook and on YouTube, and trust that we'll do the reading for you. Let's get into the details, shall we? Because Ghana on Friday received the very first tranche of the 3 billion extended credit facility as made available by the International Monetary Fund. On Friday, when we came your way with Let's Talk Ghana, where we put Ghana first in all of our conversations, we engaged an economist on the IMF deal, what it means, and the expectation going forward. Today, we're narrowing our focus on the energy sector. That's because from the 1st of June, you're going to be paying more for electricity, 18.36% for electricity. Now that forms a part of conditionalities presented by the Ghanaian government to the International Monetary Fund to reform the country's energy sector. Exactly what are the details of the reform based or captured in the IMF report? Those reforms are going to come onto your screens pretty shortly now, but let's just walk you through some of the things that have been highlighted in this document that's been made available to us by virtue of the International Monetary Fund. And so the first of many is that additionally, and that's on page 17 of the document from the International Monetary Fund, the first is that quarterly tariff adjustments will be implemented in 2023 to compensate for any exchange rate and price movement and to bring tariffs close to cost recovery level, while efforts to improve operational efficiency of energy distribution as planned in the energy sector reform program and the renegotiation of contracts with IPPs are expected to further reduce costs. And so that's the first of many as captured in the IMF document, which has been made available to us. I'm going to go on to around page 65, which has a lot more meat on energy sector reforms as captured in the document and what government is seeking to do. Remember, when this government came into power, they've been seeking to renegotiate the take or pay clauses in the energy sector and essentially reform the entire sector because the debt there continues to balloon and it is not favorable for us in terms of debt management and the overall management of the Ghanaian economy. So if you go on to page 67, if we could start from there, or 66 rather, in terms of administration on energy sector reform. Let's start from page 67. And so on page 67, the reforms are outlined quite strong, and I'm reading from a laptop just to provide a bit more context for you as to exactly what the position of the Ghanaian government is going forward in terms of the more that you'll be paying for your electricity. And so 18.36% by the start of June, expect another by say September, August, thereabout. And so, amongst many things, they are implementing an upfront weighted average electricity tariff adjustment of at least 29% in January. That's come and gone. You remember we paid around 29% more for energy or for electricity when the year started. That has taken effect, and they're going to be publishing new tariff setting guidelines for electricity distribution, and then publishing technical notes to explain and justify the quarterly tariffs. And so they mention the quarterly tariffs here, and then updated sector recovery plan, and amongst many other things, renegotiation with the independent power producers as well on these take or pay clauses. But essentially, amongst many other things, you're going to be paying a lot more for the electricity you consume. And I will not want to bore you with a lot of the documentation as captured by this particular document, but the overarching goal is to introduce more efficiency in the energy sector and make energy pricing more cost reflective. Now, over the course of the medium term, the government says that they will fulfill this objective by fully implementing the energy sector reform program to reduce power sector financial shortfall, improve ECG operational performance, and fully implement tariff reforms to ensure quarterly adjustment for cost recovery. So almost similar to what I read to you first. And so that's the position of the Ghanaian government. Essentially means that you pay more for electricity starting from the start of this year, which has already kicked in. There's another rise, 18.3% from the 1st of June. Let's subject this to some analysis, shall we? Gideon Ofosu Piasa is an energy analyst. He's joining us on phone now with some more thoughts on these proposals from the Ghanaian government and exactly what it means for you as an ordinary Ghanaian. Mr. Piasa. So let's start. You've looked at the portions of the document which speak to the country's energy sector reform and the quarterly tariff adjustments to ensure that prices are cost reflective. Your general thoughts on the plan by the government as presented to the IMF, considering that these conversations on energy sector reform has been in the offing for God knows how long?
Thank you very much. The issue is that when you look at the objective, the idea is to the idea is to introduce more efficiency into the energy sector, and then also to make energy pricing more cost reflective. Now, what we are seeing is that there are different strands to it. If you are talking about the issue of cost, the issue of cost from the perspective of the power producer can sometimes serve as an incentive for reliable supply and then also for new market entrants. But from the perspective of the consumer, the issue of reflective cost may mean high
utility tariffs,
which might be unaffordable for the consumer, and then by so doing hinder the electricity as security of the consumer. But when you put these things together, the issue of cost adjustment, there was this work that we did, and then we tried, we spoke to energy sector experts to rank the issue of the various strands of energy security. And then one of the things that we found was that, yes, although cost is very important, or the issue of affordability is very important, it isn't as important as the elements as in like investment, like reliability of supply, like the availability of electricity supply, and then governance. For instance, if you don't even have power, would you rather say that, okay, there is no power for me to use, than for there to be power and then for the power to be expensive? Which one would you go for? I think many would want reliable supply of power. The availability of it. And then if that is expensive, that one much more preferred than the unavailability or unreliability of power at all. So there are various strands to it, because this issue of cost reflective tariffs is also going to feed into the investments that these electricity company makes. Now, when you look at the reason why we are accruing a lot of losses, for instance, it is a function of the obsolete electricity infrastructure that we use, and then also the issue of commercial losses that we need to deal with. So one would have to look at both sides of the coin, and in order to balance it, so that the utilities can be in business, can provide reliable power supply, while the consumer is also not so burdened. So we should look at it from that angle.
Well, we've been paying a lot more since the start of the year because this plan was presented to the IMF as negotiations started last year. We saw a near 30% increase at the start of the first quarter. The second quarter implementation is taking effect, and yet still, over the course of the last few weeks, there's been continuous erratic supply. And so for the ordinary Ghanaian, yes, we've begun to pay more. The expectation is that we'll pay even a lot more to ensure that the power stays on, even though it's expensive. We're still not getting stable enough electricity supply.
Yeah, so that is the reason why the PURC has upped its game. The PURC has upped its game. What they are doing is that they are looking at promoting transparency, and then also to hold these power companies accountable. So, for instance, they do publish tariff setting guideline, which is to say that the components of what goes into pricing is so open. Everybody should know of it. We should know that if the exchange rates do not do well, if we know that inflation goes up, if we know that fuel prices goes up, then that is invariably going to feed into pricing. So there's transparency around the whole issue. So there are elements of the management of the economy in such a way that these macroeconomic factors will be dealt with, that we have relatively stable exchange rate, inflation will be low, and then put in measures to be able to manage the fuel feedstock so that it doesn't feed into higher pricing. Now, what PRC is doing is that PRC has instituted an energy performance index, utility performance index, and then what that is that you are able to drill down to the for instance, if you are looking at the distribution company, for instance, which of the ECG offices are not performing so well, who are performing below average, so that then we can, or policymakers can concentrate their efforts there and then ensure that they up their game. Yeah, so in as much as we are not saying that reliability, I believe that PRC is upping its game, trying to put them on their toes. So for me, I think it is a matter of time. Let us continue to mount pressure, and then I'm sure that things will fall in place.
Right. The last point I want to get thoughts from you on is this one on publishing an updated energy sector recovery plan after cabinet approval, and to also identify measures and timelines by June 2023. Then they mention as well concluding PPA negotiations to reduce the take or pay liabilities. This has been a conversation since this administration took charge. You've been in the energy sector for quite a while. What's the challenge with this energy sector recovery plan and this take or pay agreement? How tied are the hands of the Ghanaian government that 6 years down the line we've still not been able to reduce these take or pay agreements?
Okay, so the government came up with an energy sector recovery plan, which was to span from 2019 to 2023. And then from where I sit, the content has been largely implemented. There are ongoing negotiations on the issue of overcapacity. Now, when you look at the plan, the fulfillment of the various phases of the plan is going to ensure that we get some gains, or we're able to reduce the debt by about 5.5 billion USD. And then if nothing is done by December 2023, the debt is going to shoot to 12.5 billion USD. Now, if you look at the various action points in the plan, so phase one, for instance, there was this action of making full and timely payment of electricity bills by ministries, departments, and agencies. And then we have seen some steps in that direction to ensure that these MDs who are not paying, there's some kind of recovery being done in order to ensure that they pay their bills. The government has instituted a policy around the least cost fuel procurement. There are also policies around the competitive procurement for energy supply and then service contracts. There is also a task force in place that is managing the implementation of the plan. And the issue now has to do with how to address the excess take-or-pay generation capacity payments, and then also completing the gas infrastructure to be able to ensure that we use the gas that we have contracted for productive use. So these are the issues or the remaining bits to it that policymakers would have to look at.
Right then, Mr. Fosu, I appreciate that you could speak to us.
Thank you very much.
That's Gideon Ofosu. He's an energy analyst speaking to us this morning here on Let's Talk Ghana on what this all means for you. And so you've heard it for yourself. The conversations will continue, but brace up to pay a lot more for your electricity, particularly from the 1st of June, and it will continue to go up as the Ghanaian government works in line or in tandem with these policies they presented to the IMF that they are seeking to implement. It's been described as ambitious, but we'll be in the country, we'll monitor and provide details for you here on Let's Talk Ghana. We'll return shortly to talk the 82 police officers who took the IGP to court. There's been reaction. I've been gauging the thoughts of security analyst Emmanuel Kuting. We'll hear from him when we return shortly. Stay with us. You're welcome back to Let's Talk Ghana here on Studios 2 Television. This show airs every Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays here on Studios 2 TV on YouTube as well as on Facebook. On Friday, we brought you details of a suit by some police personnel who were fighting who had dragged the IGP and the Attorney General to court over a lack of promotions. The 82 police officers who are currently at the High Court are seeking, amongst many things, to be promoted after having secured the necessary academic degrees and masters and be admitted into the police college to undergo further courses to receive their promotion. Well, there's been a lot of reactions to this, and I put some of these concerns, and particularly that of the 82 police personnel, to security analyst Emmanuel Kuting, what he makes of it. And he, amongst many other things, starts by saying that this raises a cause for concern as the police is supposed to be focused on protecting you and I.
In fact, if you look at the issue per se, it should be a matter of concern to everybody, because our security institutions have very guided rules, and they are the least institution that can go to the extent these officers have gone. And if you look at management theories, it falls under two: equity theory and organizational justice. So if you look at these theories per se, even if as many as, let's say, 12 employees raises a concern about motivational issues like promotion, like these officers are talking about, it is worth a second look, especially given that these are security officers. So the question we have to ask ourselves is that, is it true that many have been promoted multiple times within a short space of time as expected? Is it also true that some may not have been promoted beyond the expected period? So for me, it is good for the police as an institution, at least for future reforms agenda. The problem I see here is institutional. And just like we are questioning the 1992 Constitution, that power is in the hands of an individual, so is some of our security institutions. The IGP has so much power, and we must look for reforms into achieving this. And truth be told, if you look at the peers of the IGP, he's not popular among them as we talk, because of his heavy-handedness in dealing with certain issues. And if you listen to some of these officers, it's not as if they just woke up and went to court. They try it with the police as an administrative matter. They got no responses. They petitioned the police council. They got no responses. And to see a renowned lawyer like lawyer Otu leading this cause, it means that there is fundamentally something wrong somewhere that is worth a second look.
So, for you, who should be intervening? There are those who say that the president should take keen interest in this matter and have it resolved, because, like you mentioned, the police is really important, and it will be worrying if they continue to engage in bickering of such nature.
I think it will not be good for these issues to play out in court. The police council is headed by the vice president. I think he's clothed with enough powers to intervene immediately. And I don't want us to use these police officers as guinea pigs and victimize them. They are the brave ones who have come out to speak for the majority. And I think that these officers should rather be commended for being brave in coming out to expose some of these injustices in the system that is bringing morale low within the service. Otherwise, we wake up one day and there will be an implosion on our face, and we don't want to see things of this nature. In a democracy such as ours, we must encourage institutions to work well. And I think it's about time the police council step into this matter and resolve the grievances of these officers.
Right.
And the truth be told, if you look at the service as it is, it's open knowledge that promotions are based on whom you know, the political party you belong,
right,
and certain people are promoted multiple times within a short period of time. I don't think that augurs well for the overall well-being of a security institution like the police.
Right then, a pleasure that you could speak to us. That's security analyst Emmanuel Kuti speaking to us there on Let's Talk Ghana. We'll end the show today with a statement from the Ghana Health Service lifting COVID restrictions from all entry points in the country. As you know, the World Health Organization some weeks ago declared that COVID-19 was no longer a pandemic. As such, countries worldwide are beginning to lift the restrictions and other things in relation to the virus, which continues to bedevil some part of the world, but its rippling effects continue to be felt long since 2020. And I'll just walk you through that statement from the Ghana Health Service as we wrap up on today's edition of Let's Talk Ghana. And so, amongst many things, they provide details on the country's current COVID situation, that there are only 18 active cases, none of which is severe or critical. And then they go on to, based on the global and national situation at the last national COVID-19 task force meeting on the 17th of May, the following decisions were taken. The first, pre-departure testing and tests at all points of entry are no more a requirement for all passengers. So you don't have to be tested when you're leaving Ghana. You don't have to be tested before you enter Ghana. That has been removed. The COVID-19 health declaration form for international travelers has been suspended as well, and they took effect from the 20th of May, that's on Saturday. And then for constant vigilance and protection of persons from COVID-19 infections, they go on to say that the following will continue. The government will continue the COVID-19 vaccination drive. Persons with symptoms of fever, cough, and sore throat will be tested for both flu and COVID at our Sentinel site across all 16 regions. They'll continue their surveillance. The public is to maintain general safety. Persons with complaints of fever and cough, sore throat should report to the nearest health facility, and persons who test positive for COVID are to be managed with the existing protocols. And so that's it. COVID is no longer a pandemic. It's taking effect here in Ghana as well. And so you can now travel freely. You don't need a testing. You don't need to be vaccinated and all of that. It doesn't mention if you still need your vaccination card though, but those are the details from the Ghana Health Service as it was scrolling on your screens. That's our show for today. As always, follow us here on Studios 2 Television, both on Facebook and on YouTube, and leave a message for us. I am Eric Mawina Egbeta. We'll return again on Wednesday with another exciting edition of the show. Stay with us.
Studios 2 TV. The truth is here in your eyes.